Hi everybody, my name is Dennis and welcome back to another album review. Today we are reviewing the latest record from Fax Gang, entitled Aethernet. Now this is the debut full-length record from this group, and I had never heard of them up to this point. I wasn't familiar with anything else that they had done, but I'd been hearing good things about it, and I had just had no clue what I was getting into, and I was beyond impressed. This is such a fun and infectious listen that just gets better and better as you listen to it more. It's very glitchy, it's very oddly mixed, the vocals are very quiet, everything is bit crunched, it's dense, it's noisy, it's even can be like headache inducing at points, but not in like an overwhelming way, like there's too much going on, but more in like wow, there's just so much to appreciate here. There's so much going on and it all works so well together. It's like it's hard to wrap your mind around how everything is going. The opening track is definitely a great example of this. It's entitled "Anything to Gain, Nothing to Lose." And I love that the rising instrumentals in here as it eventually breaks down in these fast, rapid, hard-hitting drum lines. It works so well, and the softly mixed vocals really contribute to the whole vibe and aesthetic of this whole thing. To me, it works really well. I can see it being a turnoff for some people, especially if you really want to like hear what they're saying, because they do have a lot. This guy really does have a lot to say on the record. But if you really want to like have a deep dive into what he's saying, and you don't want to just read along with it, it can be a little bit difficult. That didn't really bother me too much, but I can see that being an issue for some other people, and you'll know if this bothers you from the first track here. So, Anything to Gain, Nothing to Lose is a great opener. The vocals are pitched a bit higher here than they are on other tracks, but I think it works for the overall sound palette of this song. I love the lyrics that talk very bluntly and openly about depression and dark, even suicidal thoughts at times, where you feel like, there's nothing for you to gain, you don't have anything to gain, there's nothing to lose, it's just nothing, there is just nothing. Because you hear that phrase a lot of like, oh, well, what have I got to lose? But they take it a step further and say, well, I don't even have anything to gain. And I think it adds kind of a layer of depth to it there, and it's very sobering and relatable to hear just how much pain he really feels. But it's not all negative. I actually really love towards the end of the track where he becomes much more hopeful. He says lines such as, "Save the liquor and booze and my knees that were bruised. Don't want to be yet one more dead on the news, 'cause those deaths come in twos. Even more, it's the truth." And I love this reflection towards the end where he's saying, yes, I have all of these horrible, destructive feelings, but I don't want to be like that, and I don't want to let it dominate me. Put away the vices, put away the things that are causing me damage, and just try to work forwards. I love the sad yet uplifting tone that's taken not just on this song but across the entire record. And there's other points on this track where he brings up religious themes. He talks about, how he feels like he's not worthy of forgiveness, where he hasn't been to church in years. I believe the way he phrased it, he hasn't sat on a pew in years. And this builds on the religious themes that are kind of slipped through the cracks of certain songs here and there. It's never really the core focus, but it's very apparent. There's a lot of talks of saints and demons and, again, forgiveness, and even we'll get onto a later song, sprouting wings and flying. There's a lot of religious illusion and ideology that's presented on here, which I think is very striking for someone who claims to have, not had anything to do with religion in a very long, long time. And this builds into the next track really well, I think. It's entitled Reality Dreams, and it doesn't really have all that much that makes me love it outside of the other songs, but everything I love about this album is kind of encapsulated in this track here. It's got a fun beat. I love the vocal manipulations on here. It's got well-written lyrics about the difference between reality and dreams, and wanting kind of both of them to be each other at times, and kind of struggling to reach those goals that you set for yourself, and how heart-wrenching that can be. It's a really, really good track on the record. The following track was probably one of the weaker ones on here. It's entitled Itsumo. I think the songwriting is fine on it. It definitely builds off of these themes that are established previous, but more in the lens of towards a specific person, where, someone's trying to, do something to comfort them, and they're saying, no, don't try to say that, don't try to say that. Something along those lines. But I think the melodies, the beats on here are some of the weakest across the record. I definitely get bored of it about halfway through at least, and it's just not all that memorable of a track for me overall. However, the album does pick up to what is probably some of the peaks of the record. Mirror is a phenomenal song. It's the slowest, most down-tempo track on here. The vocals kind of have this, instead of where on other tracks we have these high pitching and this heavy distortion, it's still very distorted, but in a much calmer, more low-key, and almost constant way. The vocals don't really change a whole lot until we get to the choruses on here, where they do rise some more. It's a really, really beautiful song, Mirror is. The lyrics kind of are this discussion of just reflecting in general, whether it be looking at yourself in an actual reflection, or reflecting mentally on your life and the things that you've done up to this point. And he talks about viewing himself very negatively, and being very bitter, and being aware of the bitterness and how damaging it can be for him, and wanting to change his perspective of himself, yet it seems that the only way he can do this is just not looking in the mirror at all. And I think this is a really interesting track here. It's very, very sad. It's a very sad track, but it's also one of the more relatable ones on here. The soft subtlety of it contrasts beautifully with, again, the very dense, noisy instrumentation across the rest of the record. And it just ends up being really, really beautiful, I think. I love the way that the kind of, almost sit down, just stop and reflect on yourself for a minute. It really matches. I love how that matches with the instrumentals that are, kind of just slowing things back a little bit and just taking some time to reflect on where things have gone. Fallen is another great track. Again, instrumentally, I love what it does. I think it is a beautiful song overall, and I love how the intro, the opening lines on here start with staring deep into the mirror, which transitions beautifully from the themes presented on the prior track, where now we see where he's actually looking in the mirror, and he's symbolically falling deeper and deeper into this depressed state. And instrumentally, it is just gorgeous. It is such a gorgeous song. I love just everything about this instrumental, really. There's not a weak moment on here, I don't think. And I love the way that he talks about how he almost feels like he was destined to be this way, where his wings were clipped from the start, where he can't fly, he's just falling deeper into this abyss. But at the end of the song, he has this uplifting figure, someone who's helping him, someone who's supporting him, someone who he's almost envious of, because he looks up and he sees them flying. He sees them soaring above the abyss and doing well. And he's almost jealous of that. He wants to be like that. And he doesn't want to bring the other person down. He wants to reach those heights as well. And this person's willing to help him. Where he talks at the end, we'll jump together if you think we can fly. I think he says something along those lines there. It's a really, really just gorgeous song. And again, I love the down-tempo, the almost lo-fi sounding vocals on here. I love the bit crunching. I love the production. It all just works so well together, and I can definitely, again, this is going to be a turnoff for so many people on this, but I think it just mirrors those feelings perfectly, where it's almost like you feel embarrassed or feel scared to let them out, so you have to kind of mask them behind this wall of noise. It really contributes to the emotionally hard-hitting nature of it all. Extant was probably one of, if not my favorite track, writing-wise, on here. Instrumentally, I don't think it's quite as hard-hitting as some other songs. The instrumentals are still great, though. I still think it's a great production on here, but lyrically is really where this song just goes phenomenally. We see him, it's very similar in the sense of anything to gain, nothing to lose, where he's very, very blunt about his feelings. He straight up says at one point, I'm manically depressed. He says that point blank. He knows that he has these irrational, over the top, horrible, dark feelings. But he wants to be better, and he wants to live on. He doesn't want to hurt those around him, and as he progresses through the song, again, just being very blunt about, this is what I deal with, this is how I feel, these are the things that I am experiencing in life. But at the end going, there's so many people that I love, people that I care about, people that I can't afford to leave behind. I'm gonna live one more day. I'm gonna live one more day. I'm not gonna die today. And just telling yourself that every single day. I just love how uplifting it is. It's not a solution. The problems aren't solved. The feelings aren't gone. But it's a start of a process. And it's such a difficult step to take. Just admitting I have this problem. Especially when it's as deeply, deeply serious as he makes it out to be across this whole record. It's a very, very painfully relatable kind of feeling on here. And it just works so gorgeously. Shotgun is the next song, which has easily one of the catchiest instrumentals on here. The vocals are mixed in a deeper way. They go along with the melody. It's punchy, it's groovy, it's simple. It's almost minimalistic at times in respect with the rest of the record, but it works so well. It's so catchy, it's so fun, it's so groovy. You just can't help but dance along with it. And lyrically, it doesn't really build off of these themes in a significant way, but does address issues of escapism and looking for methods of, avoiding your problems. I do wish a song like this had been maybe put a little earlier in the track list before we had some of the more honest, reflective pieces, but I still can't deny that I love this song. It's a great song. The whole idea of it, being like he's riding shotgun, he owns a shotgun, he's shotgunning, drinks and such, and he uses all these different manners of escapism to just try and avoid the pain. And it ends up catching up with him at the end of the track, where, he's running from his pain, he's running from his problems, and it catches up to him. He drinks, he drives, he crashes, and in the character arc he puts on here, I believe he even commits suicide to end the pain. And I wasn't a huge fan of that ending, if I'm being completely honest, but I get it. I get what he's going for here, and it's just about that idea of doing anything you can to escape. I don't think this is advocating, supporting, or encouraging suicide in any way, but is more just showing how it is not, it's not something people just decide to do. It's an escape. It's something people do so that they stop hurting. And that's the thing, it's just where the pain is too unbearable and you just don't want to hurt anymore. And that's just kind of the route I think it takes. I do think the final two tracks on here are a couple of weaker moments overall. Implosion has a fun instrumental. I don't have any issues with the production, at least not until towards the end of it. I do think the outro is a bit awkward. I just don't think the lyrics do anything for me on here. The song does go on for a little bit longer than I would have liked. The lyrics are to me seem almost about just writer's block, which is a fine topic. It just doesn't really support any of the ideas or concepts in a significant way from my interpretations of them. There are still a lot of, developing moments on here about, where the writer's block, creates this internal implosion of sorts. But it doesn't really do a whole lot for me overall. There's catchier songs on here, there's better writing on here, there's better vocal performances on here. It's not a bad song by any means, it just doesn't do a whole lot for me. And the final track, Goodbye, kind of takes what I love about the rest of this record and overdoes it a bit. There's vocal layers upon vocal layers upon vocal layers to the point where even when you're reading along with the lyrics, you can't make out a thing he's saying. It's like you'll have 3 lines being spoken on top of one another. The beat's not that catchy and just kind of becomes a bit overwhelming. It's a bit too much, I think. There's not really any bad stuff on here. A couple of weak moments, and I do think it could have stuck the landing a bit better. But when this album hits, it hits so hard. The production is phenomenal almost across the board. Lyrics are spot on. The vocal bit crunching and low mixing add to the overall vibe and aesthetic. It just worked for me. I guess the only overall criticism I have would be to just go deeper down this sonic pathway, try even more things, incorporate more genres and more styles. Because it's a fairly one-note album, I'd say, but that one note is amazing. They do it really well. It's creative, it's energetic, it's fun. It's a relatively short record, doesn't overstay its welcome. It hits when it needs to. Overall, I'm feeling a light 8 on this one. Definitely worth checking out. If you don't really care for the style or the mixing, I get it, but it worked wonders for me. So, with that being said, be sure to tell me what you thought of the album down in the comments below. Tell me how wrong my opinion is, as always, and I'll see you in the next review.